Welcome to the energy finance class one more time. I suppose you got my previous tape, which I guess opened your mind to the developments in the oil industry. I don't know how long it took, 2 hours and 30 minutes, something like that. For the lecture, I don't keep track of everything in the lecture, how long it takes. I just like to teach, okay? So having said that, okay, so give me just a second. Yeah, I'm back again. Excuse me for the minor interruption. Let's start again. As I said, I welcome you to the energy finance class. And one more time, I think we're going to have a good time again. Because last time it was not much of finance we talked about, as I mentioned to you, but it was only to give you an idea what is happening in the world oil business and how the oil business has been evolving, changing over the last many decades, tens of years, giving you an idea what it might be in the future. God only knows. I don't remember, probably 14 or 15 changes that I listed on the board and explained them. I wish I had more time. I could have gone on. And my initial list when I lecture overseas is 30 changes, but then that in itself is not complete. I can, even there, I like to continue beyond the 30 changes or developments. But there I have to cover many other subjects, so I just stopped with 30 changes. Yesterday I stopped with, I forget, 14 or 15 because that time is over. There I lecture 7, 8 hours a day, and it continues for 5 days, and then followed by another 5 days of another long days and sessions of 7 or 8 or 6 or 7 hours, okay? Which I try to, in this case, try to condense it to about 2.5 hours that you listen to. So you got a good idea of what's going on, what to expect. These are only my opinions that I voiced with some indication of some facts and opinions based on trends in the past and on data and facts that I've been collecting over the many years I've been in this business. Now we have to go forward and focus essentially on the subject of the course, which is finance or energy finance. But basically it's finance with examples I'll take about energy, examples related to energy. In a minute you'll hear it. I might talk about drilling mud, which is not a finance subject. Drilling mud, petroleum engineers understand what it is and what it does. So I'll relate the subject of finance a little bit for about 2 minutes to drilling mud. So this is what I mean by saying this is a finance class. But the fundamentals of finance don't change, whether it's finance of an energy or a pharmaceutical company or agricultural project or car manufacturing, or so you can go on and on. I think I said last time that the focus in the first half till about the springtime, or maybe a little later, is going to be on the sources of capital, money. Same as capital, money, same thing. Because I emphasized you could have the best technical project or good based on geology, but you can't undertake it. Because something called finance, money is essential for any projects in the globe. So therefore, all these are very essential parts of developing a project. So therefore, I'm taking up the subject of finance to help you develop a project. And I did say, I think last time, that the sources of capital, money, are only two. is debt and equity. Let's write it down. Now I'm going to do some writing. So I hope that you will start writing with me. There is no attachment today with this lecture. So it's better you write it yourself. There will be a fair amount of writing on the board. What are the two sources of capital I keep referring to? Debt and equity. There are only two sources, and the whole semester is going to be dealing with this subject. And by the way, I hope you've received some notice about how to get the book from the copy center at the university from Melissa Lopez. I would, if I were you, I'd buy that book and only read the portion that I'm going to teach in the class, okay? And going after this little interjection of buying the book. So what is debt and what is equity? So the only two, the two sources are, number one, my money, my capital in the project. What's the other source? The other source is from somebody else. Somebody else's money is normally loan, borrowed from the bank or somewhere else. So that's it. Debt is a borrowed money that you have to return. Generally, from the bank, you borrow money for the project or any other source. And equity is my money. So together, they make up what we call the capital structure of a corporation or a company. Debt plus equity. My money and your money together becomes, or the bank's money is your, in this, I'm referring to the bank, is called the capital structure. It is vital and important to remember that these two, debt and equity, that's the director of financial job, are in balance. Now you would want to know, what do we mean by that balance, Dr. Malik? I'll explain it to you. And the question is, what if they're not in balance? I will explain that to you. It's a logical question. Let's take up two examples when they are completely out of balance in one case and completely out of balance in the second case. And let us see what happens. Let us say if a company does not believe in borrowing, that is zero debt, but they have got all their own money in the project, as 100% is my money in the project, equity. It's called shareholders' money. The shareholders are the owners of the project. That's case A. Case B is just the opposite. The shareholders have not put any money in the project, zero. My money is not there. No equity, but they have borrowed all the money for the project. If the bank is prepared to do it, let's assume they are. All the money from the project. From the bank, let's call it from the bank. Why go into unnecessary detail? So case A and case B, by just looking at that scenario, or the two scenarios, A and B, do you think the capital structure is in balance? Anybody can tell me, of course they're not in balance. There's something in the middle that will be in balance. Let me ask you a question for A. That means I put up 100% of my own money, you see that, and no debt. What's the problem with that scenario, you ask, or I ask you? Normally, again, I repeat like I've done before. I would ask the audience in my class, but here we can't do that. So I have to pose the question and I have to answer it myself. Unusual way to teach. The problem with A is equity is 100%. And the problem is, do we, the shareholders, have unlimited capital in their pocket to put them in the project? Is their source of capital unlimited? No. Everybody, by human nature, wants to grow. If you want to grow, what do you need? You need more capital. Yes? So what happens now? You limit your growth depending on how much money you have in your pocket. Your money is not unlimited, is it? So you're limiting your growth by putting all your money, which is not limited, which is not unlimited. That's the problem with that. You say, well, let's take up, I'll get up and write in a minute. So the problem limits growth. What's the problem with B? The problem with B scenario is that you didn't put up 1 cent in the project and you borrowed all the money from the bank. So what's the problem there? Let's talk about that. You're taking on too much financial risk in project B. Then I'll explain to you what is a financial risk. So bear with me, please. In case A, you're limiting growth in case B, you're taking too much financial risk. Now you say, what do we mean by financial risk? Let's talk about what is financial risk. I'll give you an example. 1984, there was a company called Gulf. I think I mentioned that yesterday's lecture. Very big company. One of the 7 sisters. It was acquired by Chevron. So Gulf disappeared. Gulf became a part of Chevron. So what did Chevron pay to the Gulf shareholders to buy the company called Gulf? They paid $13.4 billion. $13.4 billion in 1984. What, how many years? Like 40 years back. That's a lot of money, tremendous amount of money. So the first question you will ask is, where did they get the money from? That's Chevron. Simple answer. They went to the bank and said, Mr. Banker, I want some money. And the banker said, okay, how much do you want? $13 billion? Okay. There's only one way the banker will accept to give you the money. The simple as one reason they will give you or anybody the money. The only question they will ask is, if you give you the money, when will you return it and how will you return that money? And he said, well, this is how I'm going to return the money, the borrowed money. No problem. Here it is, $13 billion. So that is what happened. Chevron said to the banks, syndicate banks, number of banks put together. We'll talk about later in the course what is a syndicate bank. And Chevron said, well, you give us the money, $13 billion, and we will give it back. You know why? Because the oil price is going up and up and up. So as a result, we'll get a lot of revenue coming to us, Chevron. And from the revenue, we'll pay back the bank your loan and the interest. Whatever interest comes with it has to be paid. And the banker says, fine. forecast of Chevron. The price is going to go up, bank buys it, fine. Here is your $13 billion check. So let's write that down. So we talk about financial risk. I was explaining Chevron went to the bank saying, this is how the price of oil can go up, Mr. Banker. And as a result of the price going up, we'll get a lot of revenue and we'll make a lot of money and we're going to give you back the loan. So what happened now? Instead of the price going up according to their forecast of Chevron, price came down. Instead of falling forecast A, in reality, it came down as B. Now let's discuss this. What happens? What did actually happen? So you can see the price went down instead of going up. The forecast was going up, it came down. Now what happens to Chevron's revenues when the price went? They took a nosedive. Do they have the revenue to coming in to pay the bank the loan and interest? No. So the banker is going to say, well, come on, man, I want the money back. No mercy. Chevron said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have any money. No, sorry, we don't care. We want the money back, bank says. So what option does Chevron have? How to get the bank off of their back? Same question. It's a question that I have to answer myself. Well, they bought Gulf with that money. So Chevron had no other choice other than to say to the bank, bank, don't worry now. We have bought these assets of Gulf and other assets we have, we'll sell them. And when we sell them, we'll get some money from the sale of these assets, refineries and pipelines and all. As a result, we'll get some revenues and we'll pay back your loan. That's exactly what happened. Simple as that. So if you're forced to sell, Chevron is now forced to sell to satisfy the bank. Question is, what will they sell or what can they sell? Most people come up with an incorrect answer when I ask them. Oh, where there Chevron would sell the bad asset. No, sir. No, ma'am. They can't sell the bad assets. There are no fools sitting there willing to buy your bad assets. So now Chevron is forced to sell their good assets to the buyer. What price will they get? Because they're under duress. The bank is sitting on their head. They sell. The world knows it. So the buyer says, well, no, so Chevron now has to lower the price to be able to sell assets and give the money back to the bank. Common sense. Doesn't take a genius to understand that. Great opportunity for the buyer. Remember, I said there's opportunity on one side, there's a negative on the other side. So Chevron said, we will sell the good assets that we bought yesterday in Europe. Whatever was in Europe was part of Gulf, we will buy it. They had a lot of gas stations, okay, in all over Europe. We'll buy those. Pipelines, no, I'm sorry, we'll sell those. We'll sell the pipelines. You know, all these good projects, we'll sell the refineries in Europe. And we'll get some money. We'll give it back to you, the loan. So these are good projects. Who was waiting for the opportunity to buy these good projects in Europe for a lower price? One company called KPC, Kuwait Petroleum Corporation. They bought all of Gulf's assets that were originally Gulf's in Europe. And therefore, if you go to Europe, and I've been to Europe countless times, you see gas stations, they say Q, you know the Q alphabet? 8, Q8. These are the gas stations. Kuwait is a cute way to say Kuwait, it's Q8. Q8, all over Europe I've seen this. Q stands for Kuwait, Q8 stands for Kuwait, so that's your indication, you know, Q28 is a Kuwait. So every time you go to Europe, and there are lots of these, I've seen them all over. Kuwait. Originally, the Gulf Chevron station, Kuwait bought them. So what happened now? What happened is, the answer is, the Chevron had taken too much financial risk. Remember, that explains that. As a result, what happened? They would have gone bankrupt if they had not sold the assets and satisfied the bank. That's the financial risk. So when you go to the bank, make sure you don't take too much loan because you may not be able to pay it back to the bank. You say, well, we are petroleum engineers. Give us an example in the oil business so we can understand this concept better. Drilling mud. Every petroleum engineer, even a freshman, knows that we have a drilling mud when we're drilling the well. And we know there are many reasons to have a drilling mud going down the hole. We bring the cuttings up, cool the bit, and many others. But one of the big reasons why we put drilling mud in the hole is that if while you're drilling and there's a high pressure zone, strata formation coming while you're drilling, high pressure, very high. So what? That rig won't blow up. So the drilling mud will act as a safety from the drilling mud to blow up, and the drilling operation or the drilling rig to blow up. Why? Because the outside pressure and the weight of the drilling mud was not in balance. So you had to have no barite. Sometimes they do that. That's to make the drilling mud heavier. So that's the point. So that's what I'm going to talk about the rest of it. Debt and equity have to be in balance, and I've given you an example of both. What happens if one way or the other out of balance, okay? So it limits growth. In one case, it takes financial risk. In another case, so let me write down 5 or 6 words starting with corporation. Corp, company, co, Incorporated. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. What is all this? They all mean the same thing. All of these 8 words, or whatever number there are on the board, 10 of them, they all mean the same thing, depending where you are. Or corporation. It doesn't mean if you say a company is a corporation, or if you say it's co, same thing. Corporation, co, same thing. Whenever you see this, and your choice, whatever you call you, Malik Corporation or Malik Co, doesn't matter, it's the same thing. Whenever you see the word co, corporation, or whatever the company or incorporated, they added to the end of the name, the end, that means you're dealing with an entity, and I'm going to explain to you what's an entity in a minute, that is limited liability. That means you're limiting the liability when you're talking to a corp or a co. And you say, what does that mean? I'll talk to you. Why is it nice to have a corporation rather than deal with me or you or somebody else without having a corporation instead? And I'm going to explain in a minute what does that mean. So remember, please, all of these, what is 3 and 3, 6 and what is 4, 10, it's just telling you loudly and clearly, you're not talking to Mr. Malik or Dr. Malik, you're talking to Malik Corporation. That means you cannot sue Dr. Malik, but you can sue Dr. Malik Corporation. There's a big difference, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. In America, we refer to corporation, and we could talk with company, or co, or incorporated. That's the same. Whatever you like, you could put that at the end. So it's your choice. Limited and abbreviated is LTD. And generally, you'll find in corporations or companies at the end of the name in the UK. Now, what about AS and SA? It's all regional. SA you would find, instead of corporation at the end of the name, mostly in the Latin America, South American companies' names at the end. For example, PDVSA, PDVSA. That's the National Oil Company of Venezuela, Petroleos de Venezuela. I hope my Spanish pronunciation is halfway correct. At the end, they put SA. When you see AS written at the end of the name, like this, it's Scandinavian company. Okay, then Germans have their own, and Malaysians have their own, and we're not going to get in all of those. Okay. So the logical question that you should ask is, what in the world is a corporation? Why do we need a corporation? What good is it? Why can I deal with Dr. Malik, not say Dr. Malik Corporation that I'm dealing with? I'll explain all that. And then we'll talk about how do you start a corporation? Then we'll talk about, wow, we keep hearing this is a public corporation and a private corporation. How do you become a public corporation? Why should you be a public corporation? All these are relevant questions I put in your mind. Even if you didn't have them, I put this question in your mind. You know why? Because I'm going to answer all of them. That's why. So be prepared to get the answer for all of these questions. The first is, what is a corporation, sir? You're asking me, define it. A corporation is a legal, write it down, is a legal entity. Legal entity, E-N-T-I-T-Y. You can ask me, what in the world does a legal entity mean? A legal entity means it has rights, the corporation has rights, obligations, duties, and powers. Rights, obligations, duties, and powers. Give you an example. I think there are like 20 students in this class. Each single one of them have rights, duties, like a corporation. So we are all legal entities. You can say we are corporate. The only difference is, I hope you believe that God created us. We create the corporation. We make corporations. Otherwise, if we have rights, we have duties, we have powers. My obligation is to pay taxes to the government. And yours, when you make a lot of money, you will have to. You will have no choice. What about my right? What do I do and what do I get? Obligation is, what do I have to do? Right is, what will I get by doing it? I pay my tax. Well, the government primary responsibility is to provide me security, the roads and all the good stuff. That's the same with the corporation. They have to pay taxes. Okay. Now we've talked about corporation. Now, let me, it's like a storytelling, unfolding, the mysteries of what is finance, just starting here. Question comes to mind when you hear public and private company, or public and private corporation, or no? Or then it's a public and private Inc., same thing, incorporated. What's the difference? Then we'll talk about how do we start. Once I explain to you the difference, then I'll tell you how do we start a private company and how do we start a public company. That's called coming. I warn you, I caution you, and please do remember, we have a lot of foreign students in this class. I can't see them. I've got the pictures, but I haven't seen those. But I can tell from the names I've read on the roster, class roster. So please remember, when you're talking to a foreign students, and he says public company in his country, versus you're talking to an American here, and he's talking about a public company in America, they have two totally different meanings. Totally different. So be careful. What's the difference? Outside of America, public company is one in which the government of that country has a controlling interest. That's called a public. The government is taking charge of the company. The chief, the president of the company in a national is appointed by the government. That becomes a public company overseas. I think I should be slow, so you're writing it down. Under that definition that I've given, there should be, and there is zero public company in America under that definition. But we have 10,000 public company in America, or more maybe, but not under the definition I've given you now. How do we get to be 10,000 then? Answer. In the United States, any company, Exxon example, whose shares can be bought and sold in the public trading forum like stock exchange, we'll explain to you stock exchange later on. I think we may even get to it today, I'm not sure, but if not, we'll do it next time. That you can buy and sell the shares of Exxon in the New York Stock Exchange or some other exchange. Anybody can do it. It's on the newspaper. You can click 2 buttons and you can buy it. That is a public company that shares are traded, T-R-A-D-E-D, traded, bought, that means bought and sold on an exchange in America. So that gets Exxon in America, a public company. But Exxon is not a public company under the definition of overseas, because the government of USA has no way to appoint anybody the chairman of Exxon. That's not their business. We'll come to this again and separate the two, the bad, the good and the bad, why this and why that. The benefit of one, benefit of the other. The negative of one, the negative of the other. Now, the question is, why do we need a company or a corporation? As I said earlier, why can't you just do business with Dr. Malik as a person, as a human being? Why do you want to say, no, I want to do business with you, as a Dr. Malik corporation? Wow, what's the difference with adding the word corporation? Why need a corporation? Why do business through a corporate entity? There are many reasons why you need a corporate entity, a corporation. Incorporate yourself in the company or a company corporation to do business with anybody, particularly in America, because you get sued all the time. Slowly you get to understand what's the difference. Give me a little time to explain. I can tell sometimes maybe this is not, maybe not clear, so I know exactly when there has to be more clarity brought in the lecture. I know that. I've taught this God knows hundreds of times. I know better. So let me make a list of reasons to have a corporation. Why have a corporation? And I'm going to write them on the board, and you write them, the long stories. And once you've written, I'm going to put down 5 reasons to have a corporation. You work under a corporate umbrella, let's see, call it there, under the cover of a corporation. 5 reasons, and I'm going to write them down. After you've written them, then I'll explain every single one individually. Okay, fair enough. So let's write the reasons. I can speak off the top of my mind, but I'd rather make sure I don't miss anything. And that's where I'm going to just make sure from my notes, I don't miss any reason. Just to be careful, that's what I'm doing. And furthermore, when I write, you get very focused and you can start writing while I'm writing at the same time. Why a corporation is a question. I said, I'll give you 5 reasons and we'll discuss each one. First, let's write it down and then we'll talk about it. Number 1. Ease of division and identification. Don't worry if you not understand it, because I'm not explaining it. How can you understand what I'm not explaining? Number 2, not all of these reasons apply in every case. People have a corporation for reason 1, others have it for reason 4, others have it for 2 and 3, okay? For why do we need this is for distribution of earnings and dividends. Number 3, marketability and liquidity. Don't worry if you don't know the words of shares. Or you can write it of a public company. Liquidity or marketability of shares held in a public company. In order to raise additional capital, finally, limitation of liability. If you notice, I changed the color to blue or some other color just to separate that this is the thing. They're all very important reasons, all of them. But the last one, number 5, is distinctly the most important reason. So I'm going to talk about all of these after you've written it now. Give you a minute to finish writing. It says ease of division, I'm going to explain, and identification together with for distribution of earnings and dividends. Well, number 1, ease of division and well, who owns the company? Who owns, if there are there are 4 shareholders, what are the names? These are the identify 4 shareholders. Who are they? They're divided. Let's say, give me the A shareholder has got 10 shares, B has 20 shares, C has 30 shares, D has 40 shares. Together, they have 100% company ownership. So now you've identified and divided who has how much shares. The company has been divided into as a function of the shares held. So why is it important to know that? For reason number 2. For distribution of earnings and dividends, same thing. Basically it's saying the distribution of profits. And the profits are distributed, and when they're distributed to the shareholder, they're called dividends. So if you know the profits made by the company as $100, so you have to give it to the shareholders through dividends, same thing, the profit sharing. So you're going to send a $40 check to shareholder D, $30 to C, 20 to B, and shareholder number A gets 10. So you know exactly who gets what and how are they distributed. A good idea to have in your bylaws. Have you written it? Number 3, marketability of and liquidity of shares. especially in a public company. Later on, we'll talk about it, because public company can sell and buy shares very easily in the stock exchange. That's why I say it's not in a public company. Private company is not that easy to buy and sell shares. It can be done, but public company takes a minute to do it. Marketability and liquidity of shares held. Liquidity means to convert your shares into cash. Shares is a piece of paper. So you could understand. What good is a piece of paper? You wanted to buy a Tesla car. You're going to give him a piece of paper that you want 100 shares? No, you want cash. Liquid asset. Let me give a definition. Again, you and I talk about cash in my pocket. I've got so many $100 in my pocket. Oh, when you want to feel important, cash is referred to as liquid assets. Again, important. I've got $100. No, I've got $100 of liquid assets in my pocket. Hey, you're crazy. It's cash, but that's the way it is. So if you want to buy Tesla, you take your shares and sell it quickly. You can have the ability to market, go to the stock exchange, and no, you don't have to physically go. It's all can be handled on the computer. You know, it takes a minute if you have an account with some brokerage like Charles Schwab or other brokerages. So you can go to the computer, press a few buttons, and your shares that you bought in the company Exxon now can be sold easily. That's marketability, ability to sell easily and convert it to cash. And now you have cash in your account and you go buy Tesla. So that is certainly a very big advantage of a public company. Easy to sell. Marketability means easy to sell, easy to market. Number 5 is to raise additional capital. Very important. To raise additional capital is number 5. Number 4, forgive me. What does that mean? That simply means this. Let us say you say, I want to grow. The company needs to grow. Now what happens? You need capital, right? You need money to grow. What are the 2 sources of capital we're referring to? Can you remind me? Only 2. Debt and equity. Debt has to do with shares. No. Debt has to do with loan from the bank generally, and equity is shares. So what happens? You want to raise the money, either you can sell more shares and get cash to invest to make the company grow. But that's one. The question, so that helps you raise money. Capital is to sell more shares. If you're a corporation, you can sell more shares. Or the company can go to the bank and say, oh, I want money for a loan, and then you go through it and they decide to give you more debt, loan. What's the problem? You got a financial risk account. So it's a balancing act. You don't want to go a loan, go to shares. Okay. But then the question is, you've got 10 shareholders and you get another 5. That means the 10 have diluted their percentage of shareholding in the company because you added more shareholders, right? There's another problem with that. That's next level of the lecture. Not yet. Lastly, and I said importantly, to limit or limitation of liability, particularly I would say in the United States. Let me take an example for you to follow. Let us say, what does it mean? That I want to build up, I've got a corporation and I ask a contractor, let's call him Johnny, Just Johnny, not Johnny Corporation. That's the name of the guy. I said, Johnny, I want to building a 12-story building in downtown, and my company is expanding. So can you do it for me, please? He said, no problem. I'll do it. What it is? Give it $10 million or so. So what happens? He starts building the building, constructing the building. And when the rain comes down, first rain that falls in over downtown Austin, what happens? The building comes crumbling down. Dun, dun, dun. Big problem. So what am I going to do? Let him get away? No way. So I'll go to the judge. Mr. Judge, look at the Johnny guy. He's supposed to build a building, which he did, but it came down. You know why, Judge? Why? Because he did not put cement with the sand. I'm not a civil engineer, but even a basic 101 class of civil engineering will say, for the building to stay standing, you have to mix the two, sand and cement. Cement doesn't stay up in the air. No. Sand does not. Sand castle only when the children go to the beach. When you put your foot and you cover it with sand, and the moment you take the foot out, the little castle the children make, it comes crumbling down. So I said, Judge, this fellow only put sand, never put any cement. He's a crook, Judge. He took all the money from me, did not put what it takes to keep the building for a long time. And the judge talks to the fellow, Johnny. He said, Johnny, what happened? Johnny has no answer. So I said, Judge, this fellow is a crook. He has no answer. Look at the guy. And the judge, yes, Johnny, you are a crook. I'm going to punish you. Let that be a lesson for other Johnnies like you. What does that mean? You have to pay Johnny, Dr. Malik, for this mess that you've created, a $20 million penalty and for making the mess. That's your punishment. Pay him $20 million right now. Where do you think is Johnny going to get the money to pay me $20 million? He can't go to the bank. No bank is going to ever let him come inside. He's already been declared a fraud outside. He can't ask shareholders more money because they already, worried that the company, because they're the owner, this fellow, if he has shareholders, nobody is going to invest with you, Johnny, because the world knows you're a fraud. So you can't go to the shareholders because you're a fraud. You can't go to the bank. They don't trust you. Simple, simple, simple. So what can happen? The bank says, the judge says, okay, Johnny, if you can't pay the guy, go to his house if you like. Go to his office if you like. And take whatever you can. Take the 4 rotten bananas sitting in his refrigerator. Take whatever you can get hold of. That's yours. Take the bed from the bedroom and go sell it for $100 and make up for your $20 million loss. The little children, tricycles, when the babies are 2 or 3 years old, you have tricycles. And I say, take the tricycle of the little baby who's 3-year-old. And what happens? Baby starts crying. No father will tolerate that. They don't care. You cannot imagine. I know I've been there. No, I'm a grandfather. They can do anything, but they can't accept the little child crying. So that's what happens. I'm going to explain to my child, this fellow is a crook, 3-year-old. So what? So what have you done now? After all these strange examples I'm giving you, Johnny, have exposed yourself to unlimited liability. You don't want to do that. You want to limit your risk, your liabilities risk. How do you do that? He asked me. The answer is, don't just go do business, talk to Dr. Malik and say, well, I'm Johnny, I'll bill you. No. Start a company, incorporate, start a company. Incorporate means start a company. I'll teach you how to do it in a minute. So next time when Dr. Malik comes and says, build my building, and you agree on, $20 million contract, and when you drop a contract, at the end, put on Johnny Corporation or Johnny Incorporated or Johnny Company, whatever you want to call it, signed, or whatever name you want to give it, doesn't have to be Johnny. Not as Johnny, but as the president, call yourself president, whatever you want to call it, vice president, director, that you can sign there with an agreement with me, no problem. Now what? Now I'm dealing, I'm the one who's asking to construct the building, not with an individual, I'm dealing with a president of a corporation. I'm not dealing with a corporation, not an individual. Remember, now I'm dealing with a corporate entity, not with an individual. So what happened? Now we'll make it short and quick. Now the same corporation builds the building, comes down, no sand in it. Now I go to the judge and judge says, hey, corporation of Johnny, you're a fraud and all that bad stuff. Now you have to pay this Dr. Malik $20 million. That's your punishment. He says, I don't know. He said, no problem. All the judge will say, Dr. Malik, you can get $20 million, not from Johnny, but from his company. So what do? I go to the corporation called Johnny Corporation, open the door to see whatever I can salvage from there. All I see is a table with 3 legs, not even 4 legs. Sell it for nothing. It's like firewood, go burn it. The total assets of the company is like $29.30. That's all I get out of the $20 million I expect. So that means you can't go to the house, you can't go to the refrigerator, you can't take the tricycle of your daughter. That's what it is. Very important. In the United States, you can be sued for anything. I can't imagine left and right, frivolous lawsuits, meaningless lawsuits, and they advertise, we'll represent you, because if put up the case before the judge, if the judge says, yeah, give the guy $20 million, attorney makes a lot of money. But if the judge says, no money, no judgment, the attorney doesn't get paid. So, but for filing the complaint, attorney doesn't have to worry too much. There's not much cost in that. But if he wins the case, he got lots of money coming to him. If he loses it, so what? There's no penalty for losing a case. I hope you have some idea why it would be a good idea to always work under the guise, under the umbrella, under the cover, not a cover up, but a cover, legitimate legal, it's all legal, of a corporate entity. Remember, legal entity. Now let us go on. take up some individual, separate, singular terms related to finance. That will give you an idea, and that will help me develop the language of finance, terminology used by bankers and all these finance people. The same way I think I said in my initial lecture, I think, because I give 2 lectures, one for 3 months, one day. Generally, there's some introductory things about this, like, like PVT, pressure, volume, temperature, very typical petroleum engineering subject. So that's the terminology. So if all of you talk to understand a petroleum engineering subject, the basic thing is to understand the language they use. That's profession. So logically, now I will have to teach you the language of petroleum agreements. If they say IPO, somebody says IPO, what the dickens is an IPO? What is a preferred stock? What is a subsidiary? What is market capitalization? These are all finance-related terms, all of them, and many more. So to now, starting in a minute, I'll introduce you to those terms. So next time you talk to a fellow, in the finance business, you know what he's talking about. And he would be impressed that you know what you're talking about, because now you've already taken my course. Practical things we're going to discuss. Okay? Let me, just to share this, I might have done it in the other class. I have to be very careful how I like to write big and I like to write deep so you can read it. I have a problem, I can't do it. The moment I do it, a little more, I have to tread very lightly. I have to hold my breath. How much should I press the pen, the blue and black? Because I've got more depth to it, a little more strong. I can't wipe it because there'll be a little in the background and the whole board will never be fully clean. So I have to be very careful. So now the question is, yes, I bought the cleaning thing, where they clean it. That's why I use this little bottle. I have to be very careful with that, just to show you the problems of teaching online with a board at the back. The question is, I wet the paper as I was told. It's really a common paper towel, you could get it from HEB. If I put too much of that liquid to wipe this, too much, it's too wet. If I clean it, what happens? It takes me half an hour for it to dry. Then I can write. You can't write on a wet surface, can you? Simple problem. So I have to wipe it carefully, because if I put too much, the more wet it gets. So you can see how I have to balance. I hope you can understand that. I wish I could write deep and big and all that, and wipe it. Oh, it's gone. It's not gone. I have to be just wanted you to share, with you that what goes on behind the scene. He said, well, now we understand the molecule is a little problem. It's not a problem. It's just a way to handle this. I've done it many times. So that should not be. This is just I'm saying this just to break the monotony of what is finance and all that stuff. A little storytelling like this helps you break the monotony. And because I'm going to start on terminology, and this is a logical time to break in the sense of not take a break, in the sense of, break the subject matter to terms. The first term I'm going to talk about is preferred and common stock. So write on preferred and common stock. I'm trying to wipe it lightly and it's not coming off. So now I have to do a deep cleaning. And I'm putting this liquid here to show you. And if I put too much, it's going to get wet and I can't write it again. So sometimes I may even have to wait a little bit for it to dry up. If you ask me, I really, really miss teaching in person. You know, where we can interact and we look at each other, we smile and we laugh and we wait for questions and I expand. As I think I told you last time, 2 hours of lecture like this non-stop without an exchange of, all that stuff, like teaching 6 hours in person. Believe me, I was telling my wife this. I said, well, I've taught 6-7 hours every day for 2 weeks. Never felt like that. But this is a different story. It's only 2. No, it's not. It's 6 hours. But anyway, I've accepted the responsibility. I joyfully, lovingly. I'm not saying it's a burden. I take pleasure in teaching. If I didn't think it was pleasure, why the heck would I do this? Okay. So let's get to the point. Now, it's better here. Dry this part. I agree. Please write those down. So I can explain every single one. Okay. And now I'm talking about, remember, debt and equity sources of capital. Today's lecture has to do with equity, shareholders. Shares, not debt, loan. That comes after this. Shareholders are the owners of the company. Remember. So if you got one share of Exxon, you're a shareholder of Exxon, and you can have one share of Exxon. That means you're owner of Exxon. Did you know that? Only by virtue of one share, whatever the price, and maybe it's $100 price. So today the focus is on equity, the shareholders. You can have two kinds of shareholders in a company. You written the one is called preferred, right at the top, preferred stock. Share, sometimes we talk about preferred shares and preferred stock. Shares and stock are interchangeable words. They mean the same thing. Generally, we refer to them as shares, but I wanted to add the word stock so you to open your mind to if you see preferred stock. So what is it? Dr. Malik never taught me that. So they're the same. Preferred stock or preferred shares. And the other kind is common stock or common shares. Okay. And the third is, in line, is annual shareholders meeting. I'm going to put all these three things together to explain them. It has to be done together. Annual shareholders meeting. Okay. Now that you probably have written it, let me explain what I've just said. When you have a corporation, even if there's one shareholder, 100%, you own it, doesn't matter. Maybe it's so small, it's like $100 in it, doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be big to be called, a big corporation. No, you have a 100% shareholding yourself. Under the law, under the regulations, corporate regulations, every year, all the shareholders, everybody doesn't have to attend if there are 10,000 shareholders, have to have what they call an annual shareholders meeting. They must have an annual shareholders meeting, even if it's one shareholder. He must have written up. Today, I, Christian Malik, that's my name, my corporation, whatever, I'm the president of corporate, Malik Corporation, had a shareholders meeting in Hawaii, Honolulu. It doesn't matter. And I sat on my breakfast table and decided that I'm going to give myself so much salary and have a car paid by the company. But the point is, if it's your company, you'll have this from one pocket to another pocket. You have to profit. So that's a shareholder meeting, or like big corporation could have 30,000 shareholders of Exxon. They're not all going to meet in Honolulu. So Exxon will send a notice to all the shareholders, whether they've got 10,000, a shareholder has 1,000 stock, or one stock, or 20,000 stock, doesn't matter. They all will be invited to a meeting. So Exxon shareholder meeting will take place in Woodland. Well, okay, takes place in Dallas, in that area in Dallas. They have the head office there. What is the Irving, Dallas, somewhere there. And on January the 11th, 2000 and whatever we are, 22, at 10 o'clock. So that's the owners I've told about it. Some may come, some may not come. I've got a few shares here. I've never attended a shareholder meeting. Okay, but that's up to me. If I want to, I can, because I'm the owner. It has to take place at least once a year. Now, why did I have to go into that discussion is because in that meeting of annual shareholders, there's voting. What do they want to do next year? Who should be the president and the director and the vice president? Not all the way down to the security guard. The question is, who gets to vote in that meeting? Only the common shareholders. So you can have preferred shares or you can have common shares. Only the common shareholders are entitled to vote in the annual shareholders meeting. That's all. One vote per one share. The question is, what about the preferred stockholders? The preferred stockholders do not, that's a big difference, have the right to vote. They can attend the meeting, but they can't vote. Then why do we call them preferred? Because in certain things, they have a priority. Sometime in case of company has dividends of $100, the profits, the preferred stockholders may get the profits dividends first, as an example. So in some of these some of the benefits that accrue to them, benefits like the one I just gave you, accrue to the preferred but not to the common shareholders. While the common shareholders can vote, but the preferred not. So depending on me or you or whoever is buying the shares, we like to weigh whether I want to buy preferred stock, preferred or common stock. However, 90%, 95% shares that we see in the stock exchange being traded, bought, are common. So preferred are very rare. Maybe big corporations like Walmart and General Motors and Exxon and Chevron and Shell, they may issue both kinds of shares, but generally if it's a small company, they generally have one kind of a share called the common stock or common share. And no, I pause. I can go on because to help you write, see? You may find some of this stuff in the book that you got to buy, but there you'll have to sift through God knows how many pages, tens of pages before you can locate where this is the subject. Even if it's there, what good is it if you can't find it where it is? Some things are in the title of the chapter, some are not, but this would be somewhere in the book, but then you'll have to look for it. Okay. The next word is par value, no par value. Additional paid in capital. These three, let's see what's next after that. I can't read, that's it. So write on par value, no par value, and write an additional paid in capital. I think there should be one more. Oh, yeah. 3 plus also write down, it's here, I've written it. Initial public offering. IPO. 4 things. I'm going to put them all in one paragraph to explain what these mean. Additional public offering, mostly referred to as IPO, remember that. So the question is, what do we mean by par value and no par value? The shares have a face value, meaning the par value share is like a piece of paper, like a certificate. On it, it'll say the face value of the shares printed is $10. $10. That means when this was bought by somebody, I'm going to explain that a little more later. It was sold for $10 at that time. When it was sold for the first time, the face value was $10. So take out the word par if you don't like to put a face value. The second type is no par value, no face value. So no price, nothing is given on the sheet of paper, the certificate. Very important. Now let's talk about first IPO to explain all this. Then we'll come to additional paid in capital. Let's start with initial paid in, no, initial public offering. English word referred to as IPO. What does initial mean? Initial is initial. What can I say? For the first time. When you say this is initially, that means this is for the first time. First. Public offering. IPO offering means selling. That means the company is selling the stock or the shares for the first time to the public. Initial public offering. The company is selling the shares for the first time to the public. First time. IPO. So I'm going to raise an important point here now. The regulation is that the shares that the company is selling, if it says the par value is $10, those shares with $10 price on it, written, stamp, cannot be sold for less than $10 at the time of the IPO. That's a very important distinction. I'll say it so you can write it. At the time of IPO, that is the first time the stock or shares are being sold, first time, initial, the company not allowed to sell, and if the par value is 10 on the stock written, is not allowed to sell the stock for less than $10, if that's the par value of the face of the stock. On the first day, important is first time. However, very important, even on the first day, the company can sell the share for more than the $10, more than the par value, but not less than it. They can sell it for $10, they can sell it for $20 or $15, but they cannot sell it for $8. They can sell it for more than the par value. Got it? That's the regulation. At the time of the IPO, first time. That's so important. Okay. You clear? Now let us talk with additional paid in capital. You see the word additional paid in capital? What does that mean? Let me give an example. Let us say at the time of IPO, the company is selling 1 million shares. Which has a par value of $10 each. Par value. At the time of the IPO, the company can sell this 1 million shares if somebody wants to buy it for above the par value. Let us say that everybody in the world is interested in buying their shares. Okay. So people end up buying the shares to compete to buy the shares, because if they don't pay a higher price, then the other guy will get it. So then let us say the company or the shareholders paid $15 for the million each for the million, $15. Therefore, for each share the company received $5 additional for each share. Since they sold 1 million shares total, that means they got an extra additional, how much capital? $5 million. Number of shares sold 1 million, additional money they received per share above the par value is $5. Multiply 5 by 1 million shares. That is called additional paid in capital. Okay. Let you write it. I hope that even with this 1 hour of lecture, that's the start, I hope that already you're seeing the mystery, the phobia, the fear of finance, I hope is slowly lifting. I hope so. I hope the next time when you look at an annual report of any company, Exxon or Chevron or Shell, you will begin to understand what's in the report. We're not completely in the knowledge yet, but at least it gives you a confidence slowly, I guess. Because historically, what I see happening is technical people or geologists and all non-finance people or business, they look at an annual report somewhere and they put it on the side. Oh, I don't know what this is. Oh, this is mumbo jumbo, meaning nonsense. Wall Street Journal, I get it every day in the morning, every day. Talk about some of the finance-related subjects, very useful, extremely useful information. Your stocks and all that good stuff. Again, some typical non-business professionals. Oh, this is some nonsense. Hey, this is a finance, a bank and mumbo jumbo. Mumbo jumbo is just a local says nonsense. And they put it aside. I hope that's my desire. That's my objective. That all this mysterious thing of Wall Street, what it contains, an annual report, I hope they begin to evaporate a little bit. That's what I want to do. Add to that. As I said, this is not a course that only applies to you as petroleum. It applies to everybody who makes a fair amount of money. They're going to invest. They need to know where should I go? Should I buy common stock? Should I preferred stock? Should I buy at par or should I buy no par? All these words that meant nothing to most of the technical people. I hope slowly the mystery is going away, okay? That's why I say it's nothing, it's finance, no big deal. Do that in your sleep if you like. You come across another word in public or in financial terms, it's called market capitalization. Let's write that down. Oh, fancy word. Market capitalization. Oh, what does that mean? Sounds important. The simplest thing you ever heard. What is the market capitalization of General Motors or Walmart or all these companies? Simple. Let us say, Exxon, I guess that's an example. I keep taking Exxon, they're just example, has 1 million shares in the market, the 1 million shares. So 1 million shares have been sold and they're outstanding. When the shares have been sold and the people have bought them, in the area of business, in the business we'll call that these 1 million shares of shares outstanding. One word, outstanding. People have 1 million shares. And now at whatever time it is, 12 o'clock, a little after 12, at 12:15 now, you look at the price per share now. Now it's very important. At 12:15 is $20 per share. So let's say you look up the Wall Street Journal, it says price is $20. Or you look up the computer, 1 second, it'll tell you the price is $20 per share. So you take that 1 million outstanding shares that somebody is holding. The price is $20 now at 12 o'clock. Multiply the two. And Answer is simple arithmetic. It's $20 million. Wow, that's called market capitalization. That's it. That is called market capitalization. For 3 minutes, this phobia. Oh, I don't know what is market cap. I don't know what it's about. It's a big word, man. I know PVT. Minute you know what it is. Next, remember, market capitalization changes every minute. If the price of shares change in the next minute, if it becomes $19 a share of Exxon in the next minute, market capitalization of Exxon will be $19 million. Just to give you an idea. The first time a company in the world, people don't remember that, first time ever, 5-6 years ago, that reached a market capitalization, meaning value in the market, was CNPC, Chinese National Petroleum Corporation. The first one to break that ceiling, $1 trillion company. Wow, they're not that anymore. Then lately, last year or two, the American companies have, as you know, I hope you know, or not now, you probably begin to accept that and read more about Wall Street. Our stock market, the Dow Jones, and later we talk about it, is hitting a record high that is astronomical. It's hitting Jupiter and Mars and Venus, the planets and the sun, and it's unbelievable what's happening. So the price of shares are going up, of Apple and of Facebook and all these high-tech companies, computer, internet thing. Everybody's going up. Other than maybe the airline, because nobody's traveling, or very few are traveling. So therefore, while the market capitalization CNPC has dropped significantly, then came along the Americans recently have, Apple reached the market capitalization, maybe 2 years back, year and a half, of $1 trillion, and then it reached $2 trillion, and now it is approaching $3 trillion, only because the price of Apple went up. And I don't know about Tesla, it's not there yet, but it might get there because Tesla shares have shot up astronomically. So now when you read, oh, Apple market capitalization is $3 million or $3 trillion, you know what it means. Previously, you took the Wall Street and, hey, this is rubbish. No, I don't care. Now you take away and whatever company you're talking about. Apple is treated now, you know, I think I know what you're talking about. History's gone, history's taken away, okay? Hope you appreciate this. Let's take up another subject in terms of language agreement. Okay. You will, and you may have already come across terms such as subsidiary, company, corporation. Okay. Question is, what is it? I've asked this question all over the world, and I get an incorrect answer mostly. So that's what happened. You know what I'm. That takes a little time. You know, that's what I said. You know, that exchange. What is it? People give me 10 different answers. Then I expand on each one. But no, not this. No. So you know, then I explain. But here I have to question. I continue answering all the time myself without a break. Never get an input from you. Here I've got two companies, two corporations. Remember, corporation is a legal entity, rights, obligations, duties, and powers. Refer to one as subsidiary. Oh, no. I made an error, please correct it. There was written here on the top was the word subsidiary. Take it out. The word subsidiary is only at the bottom, not here. I hope you can do it. This XYZ, I put it here, put that here. Take out X subsidiary, put this here, number one. I can rewrite it, but that will be taking too much of your precious time. The only thing I want you to do is one more thing. So that it's clear, let me be clear about it. So there's no confusion. I want to make it so clear. The reason I did this, all this, is just to make it easier for you to follow, okay? This word wholly owned, WHOLLY, and not wholly owned, okay? And I move them together over here, subsidiary, okay? Just assume that they're over here. Well, I'm still not happy. Why do all this Mickey Mouse stuff? Why not just get much easier and all this stuff? Sometimes we're trying to save time, but in the end, we're okay. I'm more pleased with this because what I was trying to do by putting that, trying to be saving time. I said, no, I may confuse you instead of saving time. I might be confusing you. So I didn't save time of confuse. So forgive me all this because so this is what it should have looked like. So make sure you get it right. Take out this arrow, doesn't exist here, okay? I want to be so definitely clear that you never make this mistake. No, you can't make this mistake. While I'm here, I might as well stay here. The word is subsidiary. You see this word, subsidiary? That's the topic. This is one word that many people, when I ask the question, are confused. What is a subsidiary? They give me all kinds of answers, except the one that I want to hear. Now listen carefully. XYZ is a company or a corporation, whatever you want to call it, corporation. And this one here, I'm going to use the red pen because it does not show well normally. Oh, you can see the red arrow going down. And there is a corporation ABC, another company, another corporate. There are two separate companies. XYZ is a company, ABC is a company. Okay, remember that. Two separate companies. XYZ, a company, is referred to as commonly called, you can call it a parent company. Some people call it parent. It is sometimes called a holding company. It doesn't matter what you call it. Either way, it is correct. Parent holding. This company ABC, you see the word ABC? Is referred to as subsidiary. ABC, the subsidiary. XYZ is a holding or a parent company. I hope that is clear. Now, what is the difference? If XYZ, a company, can control ABC, if XYZ can control ABC, another company, that means ABC is a subsidiary of XYZ. So therefore we call ABC as a subsidiary because XYZ is like a parent company to ABC. What do you mean by control, you say? Let us say XYZ has 51 shares of subsidiary. One company can have shares in another company. XYZ has 51 or more than 50 shares in percent of ABC. That means on the board of directors who set the policy for the company, XYZ can put their own majority, more than 51% members on the board of directors of subsidiary. That means they can control ABC because they have a majority on the board and the board rules the company policies. So because they have a majority, that means XYZ has a majority, therefore they can control by virtue of how many members they have on the board of directors. Majority is theirs because they have majority shares. And so they can, that is why it is, I've tried different ways to explain. It should not be difficult. Sometimes I overdo the explanation, but I don't take a chance. There are two kinds of subsidiaries you can think about. Again, in the book, you probably can find it somewhere. But it's better to get it here right rather than shift 200 pages of the book. There's a subsidiary that can be referred to as wholly owned. Wholly means fully owned, or not wholly owned, not fully owned. Fully owned means fully owned. That means fully owned, wholly owned subsidiary means it's this subsidiary, wholly owned, is 100% wholly, fully controlled by XYZ. In other words, XYZ has total 100% shares in wholly owned ABC. And if they're not 100% shares in ABC, then XYZ is not, and therefore, in that case, Exxon, in that case, because they do not have 100% shares in ABC, XYZ now has a smaller percentage, not 100%. That means the subsidiary is not wholly, not fully owned by XYZ. I think when you read listen to my lecture, it'll become clear, but I'll still do it again. Two companies, number one, XYZ, ABC. XYZ called parent company can control ABC, and therefore ABC is called a subsidiary. And this XYZ is called a parent company. Why? Because XYZ can control what happens in a subsidiary ABC. That's what it is. If XYZ has all the shares in ABC, it's wholly owned, fully. If they have only relatively less than 90%, 100% shares in ABC, that means ABC is not wholly owned by XYZ. I think this was a quicker, much better, easier to understand. Okay. So I've tried 3 different ways to explain it. Maybe over-explained. That's the problem. Sometimes I go a little bit, not expecting that you already understand. You're smart graduate students. Now we have to move on. What are we talking about so far? We talk about a private company. We haven't started talking about a public company. Now, what's the difference? Private company cannot sell shares in the stock market. So let's see, how do we start a private company? Let's start again now. Give you a little 2 minutes rest, 3 minutes, to catch up, get your thoughts together. Because we have covered a lot of ground in a relatively short time. Okay, that's now. Looking at the watch here, we're closing in on almost 2 hours of nonstop. So I could say that's about it for today, but let's continue a little more. Get you started on public and private difference. What's the difference? And so the subject is going to lead to public company. So far as I know, most public companies that started at private companies. Not all, but most of them do. I'm talking about the American context, only American context. So the question is, how do you start a private company? Give me a second. There's somebody at the... Give me just a second, please. Yeah, I apologize. There was entrance outside, so I had to take care of that. And whoever there was, I said, just wait, I have to finish this first, then I'll take up his business. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. Let me introduce you to where I was. Most public companies start as private companies. Okay. Now the question is, remember, private company in America, the public companies where you can sell your shares. Private companies, the difference is cannot, repeat, private companies not allowed to sell your shares to the public. Now we'll talk about that slowly. How do we start a private company first? And how do we start a public company? Why do we go from private to public? Then we talk about how do we go about doing it. It's very easy to start a private company. Very, very easy. You could do it over a lunch break. I have a private company. You can have a private company. In my private company, I'm the, I don't know, 70% owner. My wife is probably 30%. You can do it with $100. You have a company. Pick a name. So how do we do it? Private. Public is a different story. In case of private company, you fill up the form, government forms. What's the name of the company? You want to name it whatever you want to name it? Okay, let's give it a name, a fancy name. PG, International Petroleum Corporation. Wow, International Petroleum Corporation, PG. Wow, that sounds interesting. What's the address? Give the name, address of the company, PG. Telephone number, police of contact, email, the basic information. How much money is this company have? Well, $100. Okay, fine. Send this application to us. Who are you? In Austin, there are you have MLK, everything south of MLK Boulevard. All the buildings you see are government buildings, by the way. They're all on the right side. There is the Texas Museum, but all the buildings up to the Capitol. You see the big dome, the Capitol. South of MLK, they're all government buildings. So one of them is the office of the Secretary of State, I think. Or one of those offices, they say, send your form to the PG Corporation, to the recording government office, probably the state of Texas, whatever, the office there in the government that registers companies. And so you send it to them and they may have a fee, give us $20 fee. And after they receive it, they look at it, they put a stamp and they send you back a stamped form that you filled up. That's it. That's it. In a day. Get that? Now there is your private company. You already started a private company because the owner is Christian M. Malik. He's the shareholder, 100%. The company is PG. I can have whatever name I have. That's it. With that form filled and stamped, I can go to the bank, okay, and start an account in the name of the company called PG Petroleum International. It's a legal entity. The risks are limited. So why not? I would advise everybody to start one if you're doing business in America. $200 will get you one, but you've limited your risk. Amazing. That's a private company. What's the problem? The only one problem. Under the law, you cannot and you should not sell your shares to the public. You can't put an advertisement in the newspaper and say, buy my company share PG expiration. You cannot do that. You're not allowed. You can't, that's public. Anybody can say, well, I'll buy. No, you cannot. Who can you sell your shares to then? To somebody, the people you know, that you're not a crook, you're a good guy. Want to make sure that you're a good, clean fellow, and the government say, okay, you sell your shares to Your brother-in-law, your friend, your neighbor, these people know you, your professor, and all these guys, they know you that you're okay, you're a bona fide guy, you're not fraud or a crook. So only those people. So now what do you do? I'm starting a company, let's say, and I've got 4 friends, and I tell them, look here, man, I want to start a company and it's going to be private. Do you? And this is what I want to do. This is the plan. And do you want to be shareholder? Do you want my shares? Yeah, looks good, man. So one of my friends, A, B, C, D, I'll use this. One gives me $10,000 to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in that example. Now I've got 100,000. I could put it in the bank and do my business. It's a private company, no problem. They know me. I'm not a crook. Now what happens? After 1 year has passed, the company is doing fantastic. Boy, everything is good. It's going up and up and up. Growth phenomenal, 40% every year. I want to grow. So I want more capital. To grow, you need money. So what I go to the 4 guys, A, B, C, and D. I said, look here, man, look, we're doing fantastic. I'm becoming rich and I'm making you all rich. Man, yo, boy, look at this. Hey, we like it, man. This is good stuff. She said, I want to get bigger. Can you give me more money? So I say, okay, you take another $40, another $30. They all say, you take $10 from me. Now he's got more capital and he can grow more. As a result, he finds out the company is really going better and better and better. So he goes back to the friends and says, look, man, look, we're doing even better than us. Say, come on, give me more money and we'll reach the moon. They give you a little more money, man. 3rd year, same story, going to the moon. He wants more money from, and he goes to his friends. He says, hey man, look, how can we stop? We have to get bigger, but I need more money. And what do the friends say? This is what they say. I don't know if you can see, you can't see my pocket. They show, okay, I'll do it. They say, hey man, look at the pocket. Show you. Look at the pocket. You see the pocket? Empty. So the friend said, look, man, I like to invest, put more money, but the 3rd year, I have no money left. My pockets are empty. So what's the point? You don't have unlimited friends, do you? You have a choice. You need capital. What? You go to the bank, you got financial risk. These fellows don't have any more money to give you. You want to grow. You need money. That is a difficult decision time now. And that is, to get more money, you have to become a public company. You see, from private now to get more money. Why? Because in a case of public company, you're not limited to your friend. You can ask anybody to add capital so you can grow. You can put an ad in the newspaper. Say, no, I mean, it's a private company. You can't put an ad in the newspaper because nobody knows you. With a public company, you can. There's a big difference. You don't have to go to the bank. You add more owners. But that becomes not easy. Becoming a public company is not easy. That becomes very, very cumbersome and difficult. There, sending a form to the state of Texas in Austin, Texas on MLK will not work. For that, you have to go with a prospectus. I'm going to explain everything next time, we're getting to the end here. To the Securities and Exchange Commission, don't have to write it down. I'll do that all over slowly. SEC, I'm just putting some words in your mind here. In Washington, D.C., that's a different story. To become a public company, you can't go to MLK here. No. Now you're talking with the big boys or the big girls over in Washington, D.C. Then the department, I tell you, the name is Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. I told you prospectus, I'll write it down, don't worry about it. So that becomes important. The question I'm going to leave in your mind now is, why do I have to go to Washington, D.C. now? Now you're talking to the federal government of the United States. Why do I have to go to the... So in order to become a public company, you have to go to Washington, D.C. Remember that, okay? Remember that. And the Department of Securities and Exchange Commission. You have to prove to them, and I'll repeat this part again to link it with next lecture, that you're a bona fide clean guy, not a crook. So the government has to study you very carefully. You have to take your resume. You know what is a resume? A CV? Not you yourself. The company that you're forming is going to be a little book like this. You're going to talk all kinds of stuff about yourself and your shareholders, your professional stuff and all the good stuff. And I'll give you more detail later. So they have to look at this. Who is there? The security officials are there. They're going to study and discuss and ask questions because they're making sure that are you a good, clean guy or not? That's the job of the government. So what we will start next time is, why is it that now the government of the United States is getting involved? Important for a public company to be formed. And why is it, of course, why the government of the United States is involved? And what is, this is an important civic question, why do we have a government? That leads me to the first question, or the second really, why do we even have a government? Don't you pay taxes? Yes. To whom? Part of it, I hope, runs the government. Why? What role do the government have? I'll leave this idea in your mind as a suspense. I can go on and on and on. I think you folks are pretty tired by now. I know that, I can tell. Not looking at by the amount of information I've given you transpired, but me, it's getting a little headache over for you, right? Too much. And the question is, why do we have a government? In all the countries of the world, they have a government. That is what I'm going to ask you next time. That is when I'm going to link you to why do we have to go to Washington, D.C. in case of opening up a public company. So this is where we're going to start. I'm already preparing you. And answer Securities and Exchange Commission. Then what about the stock exchange? What is a stock exchange? You know, what is what is an investment banker? What's a stockbroker? What is a net writer? Underwriting, you know, all these have to do with public company. But I think a logical place, I will always looking for a logical place when to stop the lecture. And now I think I will, because we're moving from a subject of private to a subject of public, very different subject. So there's no point in my taking another 5 or 10 minutes and then go home and talk about public now 10 minutes and break. Now that's no fun. I want it to flow like a storybook, okay? Have a good time, enjoy yourself, catch you next time. Be good and stay away from, what is it, Omicron? Oh my goodness, it's Omicron. Thank you, best wishes, take care.